Verse 17, now after the death of Jehoiada came the princes of Judah, and made obeisance to the king. Then the king hearkened unto them. How did they gain the king's ear? Flattery. Flattery. They did obeisance to him. This wasn't simply proper respect, which was due to the king, but this was, as the later verses indicate, sucking up to him, appealing to his vanity, telling him how great he was. And so the king, liking what they were saying, hearkened unto them. He listened to them. And he said, you know what? These guys are dead right. I am a great king. Jehoiada never came and said such nice things like this to me. Jehoiada wasn't a flatterer. I should do what I want from now on. I will embark upon a new path. I will show them that I really am king. And so Joash here reminds us of Rehoboam, a man of weak character because ungodly, who followed bad advice. He was all right whenever there was somebody very powerful to keep him on the right line, but remove that influence, and off he would go into sin. This warns us about the many different occasions professing Christians have for apostasy. Sometimes a member in the church reveals his true colours upon the death or departure of a strong believer who kept him in line. That's the way it was with Joash here, when Jehoiada was gone. Sometimes you see this in the lives of people after their godly parent dies, after a friend departs. That was the one tie that kept them going, at least outwardly, in the right direction. Sometimes it's even when a favourite minister accepts the call to another church. And then the person apostatizes, leaves the church, perishes. You could even say that this happens to a lesser degree, of course, with true believers who do badly spiritually and backslide because they withdraw from stronger believers. And we saw that a few weeks ago with Lot. When Abraham wasn't there to keep him steady, as it were, then he starts pitching his tent towards Sodom, and he's into Sodom. Though he always hated the sin, but he backslid badly. This can happen too when church members draw back from their friends in the church and withdraw from the fellowship of the congregation. And not just this, but there are many other occasions for apostasy. Sometimes believers, or professing believers I should say, renounce the faith when an office bearer engages in some serious sin. They get totally disillusioned. How could Reverend so-and-so have done this? But he was an elder. He seemed to be an outstanding member of the church. And look what he did. I think the whole thing's a disgrace. There's nothing in that Christianity, and I'm going back to the world. They're nothing but a bunch of stinking, filthy hypocrites. Well, of course, serious sin for anybody, especially a leader, is an awful thing. But your faith doesn't stand in the wisdom of men. Your faith doesn't stand upon someone else. Your salvation, surely, your faithfulness with God doesn't depend on how somebody else lives their life. It depends upon the Scriptures. You go with that word. If all the office bearers in this church apostatize or run off with other women or do whatever wicked thing you can imagine, that doesn't mean you give up on the faith. No. You believe the gospel for the truth of God speaking in His Word and the holiness of Jesus Christ and His cross. You don't hitch your own faith to anybody else. even if they seem to be the strongest believers in the world. No. That's a form of idolatry. Just Christ. Sometimes too, especially with the children in the congregation, the occasion for their apostasy is when they begin to flex their muscles a little bit and stretch their wings when they get round about 18 or so. Or they go off to university. Or even high school's maybe too much for them, and the pressures of the world and the rubbish they're being taught against Christ there, especially at the universities, is enough to make them depart. The Bible especially warns of the influence of false teachers in apostasy of individuals. Listening to some priest or reading Federal Vision heresy online, or reading books filled with errors. The power of false teaching and false teachers to draw away from the true church is something the Bible has always emphasized. So we are called, by this example of Joash, to hold fast to the truth of Jesus Christ. We're called to make a good start, and a good middle, and a good end. He made a bad end, which showed that his heart was never really right with God, and he perished. He didn't meditate in God's law day and night, as Psalm 1 says. He didn't read the Scriptures as he was told in Deuteronomy 17 as king to walk in it all his days. And so he turned aside to the left hand and the right hand. And with this too, we learn that we must not listen to the flattery of false teachers and false friends. That's what Joash did. You're a great man, King Joash. You'll be even greater. Be King Joash. Be really king. Rule the way you want. Where did this seducing voice come from? It came from within the church. It came from prominent people in the church. It came from these princes. It came from the very people who should have, now that the high priest had died, who should have stepped up and said, now you do need advice here. You need someone to give you support in your difficult job. We are princes. It is our position to give you help and encouragement. And the help and encouragement we want to give you is follow the word and serve the church of Christ. And the very people who should have been holding him up were used to drag him down. So far down that he fell into the bottomless pit. For the wind had changed in Judah. It was blowing now in an opposite direction. Verses 18 and 19 talk about the sins, gross public sins in the church. These sins are ascribed to they and them. And the they and them, in verses 18 and 19, following on from verse 17, obviously includes the wicked princes. They were up to it. And, this is the key point for us, King Joash. Sadly, it includes too many of the people. Many of the people because they followed the leadership of the king and the princes. Many of the people too because verse 18 says, wrath came upon Judah and Jerusalem. Not just the royal family. Wrath came upon Judah and Jerusalem for this, their trespass.